So Zack Snyder's Superman, huh?
Oh yeah. A lot of Snyder Bros are really upset about how this movie was supposed to bomb and be trash, but you're about to hear our review on this thing, and we're gonna tell you: is it better than Snyderverse? I
Wait a
don't
minute.
know.
Wait a minute.
What?
So we're not talking the Man of Steel?
Not this time. We're talking Superman.
The one with Christopher.
I feel lucky. Well, do you, punk?
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
I feel the need for speed.
I wish I knew how to quit you.
Love means never having to say you're sorry.
You do. You'll shoot your eye out, kid.
What up, film fans? Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another new episode of the Cine-Men Movie Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Juan, and I am joined by the other guys. Cast, the crew, just us, Jay.
Yeah, it's just us today.
It's just you, Oos.
Yeah. Day one ish day, ooze. Yeet.
Yeet. What a week, man. What have you been doing? How's your week gone?
Oh, it hasn't been too bad. I found out some very devastating news, but I've got it figured out. So,
We are now
other than that, I'm good.
we are on the road.
To WrestleMania. I mean, nope. Wrong road.
We were on the road to this magnificent July that was jam-packed. We had Jurassic World, Superman, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and then we're going to finish it out in 2 weeks with Fantastic Four. And I thought we were going to have a small bump in the road with Superman, but man, I can't wait to talk about it with you today. It's to me, it's one of the best movies of the year so far before getting into spoiler territory. But if you guys did not join us last week we are going to get into some spoiler territory. You can hang out with us last week and go listen or watch us review Jurassic World Rebirth. I thought it was going to be a dud pretty much. At least that's what I felt like going into it. But hear all of our comments and our reviews last week. We talked that movie. You can check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/The Cine-Men Movie Podcast. The Instagram is all one word, The Cine-Men Movie Podcast. The X is at Cinnamon405. And then the email, CINEMEN921 at gmail.com. Hang out with us and listen to us talk about Jurassic World.
Yeah, I found Jurassic World to be pretty mid. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I think three was good. I don't think I should go above or below. A three can be decent, depending on the rewatch. If the rewatch honestly is not as good as I think it might be, I'd probably even go down to a 2.5. But only time will tell for that movie. So
I've seen it twice, and the second time I was a little bit more enthused than I was the first time.
I feel like with the Jurassic Park movies, if you've seen them one, you've seen them all.
Most likely. Most definitely. Yes.
Even though some of our worlds have been rocked this week, we will still continue to bring fun and entertaining conversations every single Tuesday. Whether you're watching us live here on Emaswa Productions YouTube channel, or you can listen to us on Spotify, Anchor, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Amazon Music, TuneIn, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts, including the Prescribed Films Network. Join us on our network. We are over at the PFPN. There you can listen to the Movie Defenders, Attack of the Killer podcasts, everywhere in between. So go check them out, prescribedfilmsnetwork.com, and you can listen to us every single week, every Tuesday. So, but yeah, that's kind of been our week. Before we get to it, let's talk about some recent watches and recommendations. Jay, do you want to go first?
I'll go first. I went through kind of a voodoo binge. I didn't have much going on, so I went back and I watched all the Indiana Jones movies except the last one. I watched all the I Know What You Did Last Summers. I watched the Top Guns. I probably
Oh,
watched.
that's
Oh
your
yeah,
that's your first time watching Top Gun, right?
the second time. It's been about 10 years since I've seen the original. I got about 30 minutes into the second one, and things just came up, and I haven't been able to finish it. But I watched
Let me see real quick.
quite a few movies that you have. I watched Spider-Man: No Way Home. I watched the entire Marvel Spider-Man trilogy. I just went through and watched a lot of older movies. Backdraft. I haven't seen that in like 10 years, and it was phenomenal. And all these ones that I'm talking about, besides maybe I Know What You Did Last Summer, all of them hit very well. I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Product of their time, if that makes sense.
That kind of frightens me, but we'll get there.
And other than that, I watched my best friend wrestle his ex-best friend in a I Quit match, and it was probably one of the most bloodiest matches I've ever seen. And it was a phenomenal match. GCW a couple weeks ago, it was great. So that's my recent watches. I just went through and watched a bunch of old classic movies.
That's sometimes you need that. Like, I wanted to do that this past few weeks, especially with some of the, like you said, it's just been a tough week period, and I was like, you know what, I just need to. I posted on social media a few weeks ago. Actually, let me log in and let me read some of it because I don't have any I don't have any recent watches. Honestly, I think the last thing I watched besides
And I
Super.
watched Sinners. I finally finished Sinners after the fourth time.
What'd you think
And
of that?
I give it a 3.5.
Not
The
bad.
first hour is kind of slow and everything like that, but once they open that juke joint, shit just goes like, oh my god, it's just rapid fire. And the Asian chick, I would have sent her ass outside.
So I think the last thing I did watch before Superman was a complete unknown.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, a complete unknown. So that's the last thing I watched, but I talked about it last week's episode. So with the week that, it has been, I did, post, I was like, let me hear some of you guys' favorite comfort movies. And I'm like, man, I think it's just going to be the next 2 weeks for me. I'm just going to have to go through some comfort movies. So my recent watches probably won't be as heavy in the next few weeks, um, because most of my library is packed up. Um, but we got some good feedback from some people.
Let's
Some
hear
people
it.
some people said Back to the Future trilogy.
Oh, love it. Love it.
Rob
Love it. Love it.
Rob said the Back to the Future trilogy. David said Godzilla versus Kong. Crystal said Mannequin.
I
Um,
haven't seen Mannequin in years, and it's excellent.
Rachel said Waiting to Exhale, Girl Interrupted, and Goodfellas.
Girl Interrupted is very good.
Bruce said Step Brothers or anything with Will Ferrell.
Hmm.
Manuel said Bridesmaids.
That is an excellent movie.
Lexus said the B movie.
The B movie
Uh,
with Jerry Seinfeld.
yes.
Okay, very good
Uh,
movie actually.
Cole said Dune 2. And then Virginia said my neighbor Toronto.
My neighbor Toronto or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Scott
Isn't
Pilgrim versus.
that a Studio Go By or something like movie?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Oh, I love that movie. Oh, I watched Superbad as well this week.
Oof. Transformers 2007, and then Godzilla minus one.
I still haven't seen all of Godzilla minus one.
Man, it is fantastic. If you haven't seen it, I really like it. It's automatically my favorite Godzilla movie of all time. So my recent watches is real slow. Like I said, just a complete unknown from last week and Superman. If I had to recommend anything, a complete unknown. I don't know where it's streaming.
I don't think it's anywhere yet.
And then Superman is out in theaters. Go check out Superman. So, But if we can, let's dig into today's episode here pretty soon. Um, unless there's anything else you want to kind of bring up or talk
I
about.
just want to talk about some of the stuff that Superman has done since it's been released. If we can do that.
Yeah, we can.
Superman. Everybody with all the Zack Snyder bros out there were hoping it would die at the box office, but it did not die at the box office. It actually overperformed at the box office with $122 million in America domestically and $222 million overall. And when you sit there and look at it and judge it against Man of Steel and all the other Supermans, it's done great. It's one of the highest grossing Superman films ever. And it's right now it's sitting at an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, while Man of Steel is sitting at a 53.
Let's talk about that. Let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of today's episode. Like Jay said, he gave you some of the numbers. IMDb is at a 7.7. Rotten Tomatoes is at 82%. The Metascore is at 68%. Letterboxd is a 4 out of 5 with a release of July 11th, 2025. The budget was $225 million, but right now at the box office, just opening weekend, it's at $212 million at the box office.
It did have a $100 million advertising budget.
Let's dig into it. Superman, a journalist in Metropolis, embarks on a journey to reconcile his Kryptonian let me get this right. Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing as Clark Kent. This movie is way more than it seems. Jay, let us know about the cast.
We have David Cornsweet as Superman, Rachel Bosnian as Lois Lane, Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, Alan Tudyk as Gary the robot. We have Bradley Cooper as Jor-El. We're getting into spoiler territory here. And we had Maria Gabriella as the engineer, which is Lex Luthor's henchman. And then we have Sarah Sampaio as Eve Tessmacher, and tons more. Nathan Fillion as Green Lantern. This cast is just absolutely huge. It was written and directed by James Gunn, and I'm ready to talk about it.
We are at 13 minutes. If you have not seen it, we are getting into spoiler territory. We will not tread lightly. So 13 minutes into the episode, pause, go check it out, or listen to it, and maybe us talking about it in great detail will advise you to go see it. So here we go. I appreciate this movie so much. I think you've seen it more than I have.
I've seen it twice.
But one word that I would use to describe the movie as soon as it was over would be perfect.
As soon as I seen it the first time, I was like, okay, I need to go back and watch and see what I missed, because I felt like I missed a lot.
Yeah. What about the second time? After the second time it was over, what would you use to describe the movie?
Some plot holes, but overall very good.
Very good. And I like how, let's just dig into it. Like, as soon as you get into the movie, you only, like, legit, it gives you everything you need to know in the first 3 minutes.
It gives you text letting you know that for 300 years, gods and monsters have been among us, that Superman has been among us for 3 years, and then 3 minutes ago, he had his first defeat. And the scene that you see him crash landing into the Arctic is the very first scene in the movie.
And the movie to me is just extraordinary. Like, I love the way it opens. I love everything about it. I think this is the best Lex Luthor that we've had ever, even going all the way back to Gene Hackman.
I agree with you. The only way I can disagree with you is because the Clancy Brown version of Lex Luthor on Superman the Animated Series and in the Justice League series, but that's a series. We're talking about movies here, and Nicholas Hoult knocks it out of the park as Lex Luthor, being a conniving, he's a prick. He is literally just a prick and hates Superman. He wants to destroy him. That's the entire movie, is him trying to destroy Superman.
And I think he hates. I think this has been Lex Luthor the entire time we've seen a live action Superman, but in this movie, it really shows you that he is just so jealous of how everybody is in awe of Superman, and he's like not even from this planet. So he's like, let me destroy. Just you know what I mean?
Oh, he's out to destroy and make Superman's name bad. But here's the one thing that's very different from this movie compared to all the other movies is that metahumans, or, if you're a Marvel fan, they're the same thing. Mutants exist already in this universe. They have been there for 300 plus years. So that means, and we're getting into stage one of what James Gunn calls the gods and monsters section of phase one.
So, and let's get like a lot of this start like out of the way. I did not know what to expect from this movie, but can we just, I don't know how you felt, but while I was sitting in the theaters and I was sitting there watching this movie, I was like trying to pinch myself too because I could not believe that after all the hype and after all the waiting that we're finally sitting here watching this movie.
Agreed. Can we
Like,
sit there before we go any further? Can we sit there and say how good David Cornsweet is as Superman? Like, he feels like a genuine Superman.
yeah,
He feels like Christopher Reeves.
yeah. It doesn't feel it doesn't feel forced, and it doesn't feel. Don't get me wrong. I loved Henry Cavill, but even this feels more like honestly, it feels like you're sitting back watching a documentary, like you're watching a real life Superman.
Whenever Lois interviews Superman, and he sits there and says, because she's interviewing him about interfering in a war that he had no place in interfering in, and he sits there and the quote that he sits there and says, I could not do nothing because people were going to die. I couldn't have that happen. That is Superman through and through. Superman is hope. Superman is just, he's hope. He's the Americana way.
There's so many goosebump moments in this movie. I think that's what I appreciate most about this Superman movie is there has been no other Superman movie in the past that I've watched that hasn't given me goosebumps after goosebumps after goosebumps. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, this could be, at least as of right now, my favorite movie of the year. I felt when watching this movie, I've never felt this way about any other superhero movie other than The Dark Knight and the Batman from a few years ago. But this is probably the only superhero movie that I feel like just had goosebump moment after goosebump moment other than those two Batman movies I just named.
Agreed. It's one of those it's a movie. If we sit there and start off from the very beginning, we're given Superman just lost his first match, and he calls on Crypto to take him home, and Crypto takes him home, and this is the very first time we've ever seen Crypto in live action, and I loved Crypto. Absolutely loved him. He brought so much to this story.
Yeah, Crypto to me was like one of the best parts of the movie, and I'm sitting here looking, and my girlfriend went with me to go see it, and she leans over and she's like, "If something happens to this dog," and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, "There's no way something's gonna happen because," but then I'm like, "This is also James Gunn who teased Rocket dying in Guardians 3."
They did cut a scene where the engineer, the female that had the nanobots, punched Crypto in the face, and the test screening audiences said that was too far, so they cut that out of the movie. So there is a scene of Crypto being punched in the face.
And I do want to say, seeing some of the trailers did kind of have me a little on my set, like, man, I don't want to see Superman battle a big green fuzzy looking alien just yet. Because I will admit, the big alien at the end of not the Justice League, but the big alien at the end of the Suicide Squad was kind of like, I didn't really like that. But
Oh, the Starro.
yeah,
But that's the first people. That's the first villain that the Justice League ever faced.
so seeing the big aliens and stuff like that, I'm like, man, do I really think this is gonna be a good idea? But I gotta say, even the CGI in this movie, I had no issues with. I thought the CGI looked amazing
I
compared to
agree.
some of the past Supermans we've seen.
We, I'm not trying to discount Christopher Reeve or anything, but 3 and 4, Superman 3 and 4 are pretty shit.
Yeah, they're kind of unwatchable. But you know what? Some of the CGI too in Justice League or in Man of Steel or in what's the is it the Justice League where they had to CGI his beard off?
Yes,
Yeah, that stuff is just
that's the Joss Whedon version.
horrendous.
What I feel here is that we got the closest representation to besides Christopher Reeves, but we've got a close roundabout character of Superman that is the comic book Superman.
Oh yeah.
Everybody that interacts with Superman, whether it be Lois Lane, I think this is one of the best Lois Lanes ever.
The best.
Because I never liked Margot Kiddo. I don't know why. I just never did, But there was something about Rachel Bosnian that just felt like she knows he's Superman, but she wasn't afraid to push the boundaries and be like, and question him, like, why are you doing this? What's your problem? And during that scene, he's like, why are you doing this to me, And she's like, I want the truth, Clark. And because there is a scene in the movie where Clark, he sits there and kind of like talks himself into circles into being interviewed by Lois Lane. And once he's interviewed by Lois Lane, she asks really important questions, and she does it in an unbiased way where she's not using her emotions or feelings. She's using exact logical nonsense to ask him, did you ask the government to do this? Did you do this for this way? Did you do that for that way? And Superman kind of comes across as kind of not an outcast, but more of a vigilante when it comes to the war situation. And he was basically sitting there saying, he's like, this country is going to screw this other country over. And she's like, I don't know that. But off the record, she's like, I know that. And Superman's like, I had to save these people because they were going to die. I couldn't allow people to die. And that's Superman through and through.
And what's the TV show from back in the day with it was like the Lois and Clark Adventures?
Smallville, or it was Lois and Clark with the one with Dean Cain, or are you talking about Smallville?
The one with Dean Cain. I know. Looking back on it, it's probably not the best, but I got to.
But a lot of people have sat there and said this has a lot of Smallville tones to it.
That's what I was gonna say. It didn't. For this being such a good movie, did you get the same feeling as it didn't feel like a big budgeted, high class Superman DC film?
I did not. I felt it was more of a retrospective introverted look on how Superman sits there and be like, because let's get into some spoilers. Bradley Cooper plays Jor-El, and Jor-El's wife sit there and tell Superman to take over Earth and take as many wives as he possibly can. But, and I will say this, Superman learns from his mother and father of Earth what to do properly. What's the proper response?
Yeah.
And
Are you kind of glad it didn't go through the whole teenage and the whole young Clark like the
I
past
am.
Supermans? I'm yeah,
Well,
me too.
well, James Gunn's basically sat there and said he's like, we know we don't need to see Bruce Wayne's parents getting killed. We don't need to see Superman being brought from Krypton.
Yeah,
We don't need to see, certain other things, because we Spider-Man being bit by a spider. Why? We know the story. Why do we need a backup when we can just start?
yeah.
We know the story.
I think that's what I appreciate most about this opening Superman movie. And every scene, it's a 2-hour movie, but to me, every scene is so memorable that it's not, there's no such thing as a wasted scene in this movie. Let me put it that way.
I'll disagree. I think that there are certain scenes that could have continued longer to show a point, because at the very beginning he's fighting the Hammer of Baravia,
Right.
and Lex Luthor has basically this battleship type scenario set up where he can call out 1A, 2Z, H11, and those equal moves that the Hammer of Baravia dish out to Superman. And that was okay. It came across as kind of weird at first, because I know Lex Luthor is this very brilliant man to understand all this stuff, but it just seemed that's one of my problems with the movie, is how much Lex Luthor not knows, but intentionally tries to hurt Superman.
What do you mean you didn't like it?
I just didn't like the whole battleship aspect, if that makes sense. It seemed like I was watching a game of
Oh,
Battleship.
I got you. I get what you mean. Uh, well, I mean, yeah, I kind of felt that a little weird too. But then at the end, that's understandable. That way, I guess that's the most realistic point that they could follow camera eye
because of who because
of
of who the Hammer Bravey really is.
yeah. What did you think of the? I want to say Russian, but I know that's not it. But the Russian uh, puppet, if you will.
Oh, the two countries at war,
Yeah,
the frizzy haired dude.
he
I
was in.
was
Isn't he in 2012?
I can't he looked like he was, because I did watch that. That was one of the
Yeah,
recent watches that I watched. He
that's.
did look like that, but
I
I
think
think they just wanted a
that's the rich
crazy
guy.
dictator. I just think they wanted a crazy dictator.
Yeah, he is in 2012.
Okay, but he played his part perfectly, because what okay, before we go any further, one of the coolest things in the movie was the pocket universes,
That was pretty cool.
because since we're now, let's sit there and like go through comic book movie history. One of the biggest comic book movies to ever come out was Superman in 1978, and we're going to grow from there. What makes this movie special is they take those things from the 78, version of Superman all the way up to Superman 2 and even further. And they sit there, and I not only just them, they take other superhero movies and they sit there and give us callbacks to those, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we're sitting there asking ourselves, in the original Superman basically just caught a helicopter, saved Lois, and then defeated Lex Luthor. But there is so much going on in this movie that I think it could have been about an hour longer.
Dude, I was thinking the same thing. I think this movie could have been 3 hours, but after looking back at it, I'm kind of glad nobody bit off more than they can chew, because, like I said, maybe it's just my first time watch, but this movie had so much emotion and so much going for it that I really do think this one of the perfect movies of the year so far.
Since I've seen it twice, and now that I've sit there and kind of seen it twice and seen the other Supermans and everything, I did see, you know, things pulled from Superman 1, Superman 2, Superman 3, Superman 4. I did see those things, and not only did I see those things pulled from those, different like story beat elements, if that makes sense.
So let's. Oh yeah.
Go
Let
ahead.
let's talk about some of the other Justice Gang members, if you will, because like at first they were in the they were in the trailer, and I didn't know how much of them we were actually going to get. But you get the Green Lantern, you get Mister Terrific, and then you get
Hawk Girl,
what's her name?
Hawk Girl,
Hop.
Hawk,
Oh,
Hawk.
Hawk Girl. Okay, okay. So they're in like a majority of the movie, and I think they're so well used. Let's put it that way.
I don't. I think Hawk Girl is underused,
I could
but
see that.
I sit there and feel, if you know the Justice League and storyline of how Hawk Girl goes along in later episodes of Justice League and everything like that, even in the comic book, Hawk Girl ends up going out with John Stewart of the Green Lantern Corps. The two of them become love interests. And I think that's just what they're waiting for. They wanted to give us Hawk Girl. What'd you think of the Justice Gang name?
I mean, I think it's funny because obviously it's going to become something else. Maybe you would
It's
think,
going to become Justice League eventually, yes.
but I thought it was fun to get into and just kind of play around
Established.
with. Yeah, establish. There you go. And I do like the Knights of the Round Table scenes with the secret agents and the government. Rick Flag. I like how they introduced Rick Flag. Um,
This isn't the first introduction of Rick Flag, though.
not this version.
No. This version was first premiered in Creature Commandos on HBO Plus about 6 months ago. He is the leader of the Creature Commandos.
Oh, okay. With the same actor.
Yep. Yep. He voiced Randall Flagg Sr. in the show. Because that's how DC wants to sit there and make their products now. 2 movies a year, 2 sitcoms a year.
So let me get this. There were several people in the Knights of the Round Table scenes, if you will. I didn't see a name tag that said Amanda Waller.
She wasn't there, but she is involved in this.
Do you think it's still going to be played by Viola Davis?
It will be played by Viola Davis because James Gunn sat there and said that certain people from the original DCU will be brought back over and play the same characters or different characters. That's why we're getting Jason Momoa, not as Aquaman, but as Lobo and Supergirl.
Let's talk about Peacemaker. He made a cameo as well.
And Peacemaker season 1 is considered, if you want to sit there and consider anything, Peacemaker season 1 is the very first DCU product. That's the very first, if you sit there and look at it logically.
Even though we got the Suicide Squad before that?
Afterwards.
Was it after?
It was after.
Oh, okay.
Even though they showed Ezra Miller and what's his name as Aquaman, Jason Momoa as Aquaman, season 1 and season 2 of Peacemaker is basically the official start of James Gunn's DCU. Followed by Creature Commandos and then Superman.
And then this is the last DC movie until when? Do you know?
We have Peacemaker in August of 2025, and that should run about 8 weeks and lead us into November. And then after that, in June of 2026, we get Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, starring Millie Alcott.
Is she? This is big spoiler. Is she the same
And
one
then
that was
after
at the end?
that, we get Green Lanterns, which is an HBO Plus story.
Oh, okay. The Supergirl movie, is that the same girl who was at the end of this movie?
That is very much so, yes. It's called Woman of Tomorrow because, okay, the storyline was in the comic books and even in the movies was that Kara Zor-El, which is Supergirl, was about a teenager when she was jettisoned off of Krypton and sent to Earth. And she was supposed to take care of the baby, Kal-El. But as they were traveling through space, she got stuck in a space anomaly. And by the time she got out, Kal-El was an adult. And so she did not have to watch over him anymore. So she became a drunkard, a just a what would you call it?
Just a hot mess.
Exactly, exactly. And that's when we watch Supergirl. That's what she's supposed to be, as a hot mess of intergalactic proportions. Because, like Superman said in this movie, is that Millie Alcott's Supergirl can only get drunk on what? Red Planet places.
Red Planet places, yep.
Because anywhere else she goes, she can't get drunk. And how do we meet Millie Alcott? She is shit-faced drunk.
So that's true. Let's dive in deep to next year, June 2026. You get the Supergirl movie. Like you said, Jason Momoa playing Lobo. But one thing I find interesting about this movie is I'm kind of looking it up. Do you think this is where it takes a turn for the worst, or do you think that, since I know James Gunn is at the helm, but since he's not directing it, do you think this is where it goes?
No.
You think it just starts looking like the Zack Snyderverse?
Here's the reason why I say no, is because I find James Gunn and Peter Safran to be the Kevin Feige of the DC universe. They're trying to keep everything logical, and they're trying to keep everything in sequential order, to sit there and let you know that Zor-El is very much so different than Kal-El, because in the original timeline, when she left Krypton, she was a teenager. Somehow she got lost in a timescape, and by the time she got out of that timescape, Clark Kent wasn't a baby anymore. He was an adult. So her entire function of being a protector to Superman or Kal-El is non-void. So now she's trying to find her way through the DC universe. And from what I've understood, the Woman of Tomorrow comic book is absolutely stunning, and it makes a lot of these questions because she goes to these different planets. She gets messed up. She doesn't quite understand, what she's going through until the very end. But whereas Kal-El, in the presence that we got to see him in and Superman, he quite understands. And even in that scene at the very end of the movie, Kal-El was still sitting there like, are you sure we should do this, when he's talking to Zor-El? Right?
Yeah.
So when I sit there and think, when we get the Supergirl movie, it's going to be a very high conflicted movie based on her feelings and her age and what she had to go through, because she experienced Krypton's destruction. Kal-El didn't, or Superman, if you know him that way.
Yeah.
Zor-El, she experienced it because she was a teenager when Krypton exploded. And
Well, she's technically older than he is.
She is technically older than he is, but she got caught in a pocket universe, comic book wise. In the comic book, she got caught in a pocket universe to where things slowed down for her, and by the time she got out, Kal-El was an adult. So she no longer was watching after Kal-El. So that's why when we first see her in Superman, she's drunk. And Superman sits there and be like, yeah, since we have a yellow sun here, she has to go to red suns to get drunk and, kind of party and do her thing. And I think we're going to get, whenever Supergirl starts, we're going to get that party girl. But then we're also going to see the girl that wants to change things. There's a lot to talk about. There is so much about this film. Like Nathan Fillion as the Green Lantern. There were points in this movie.
He was so good.
He was such an asshole. And I've read interviews to where he's like, I'm in Peacemaker and I'm in and Supergirl. And as far as Peacemaker goes, and Green Lantern goes, I have never spoke the F word as much as I have in these two shows.
Was he in Peacemaker?
He will be in season 2.
Okay.
So will Hawk Girl.
Can we just talk about Mr. Fantastic, Mr. Terrific?
He, from what I've understood, since things are going very well, he is getting his own 6 to 8 episode miniseries.
I also saw that he's signed up for 2 or 3 movies.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and who would have thought he was like the on the fence between guy in Twilight as the vampire?
He just wanted to sit there and screw with Guy because he hates Guy, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I'm just here because I want to screw with Guy because I want to prove him wrong. Because that's one of the quotes from the movie that he tells Lois. And then Lois and Mr. Terrific do what? They sit there and they go through the
the anomaly maker,
the bridge to different areas. And then not only that, he sits there and he helps Superman. He saves Superman. Like, seriously, Mr. Terrific saves Superman just by using his spheres and his intellect. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because the way I interpreted Mr. Terrific was that he was smarter than everyone else except Lex Luthor. So he was trying to find a way to make things perfect between Superman, Supergirl, the Hawk Girl, everything. He was trying to find a perfect way to make sure everything fell in order in the correct way. And that was and that was his major goal, was to make sure things fell in place in a certain way.
And I think another thing that just, is mind-blowing about how good this movie is the scenes where he's not Superman, he's also a really good Clark Kent.
But those are very few and far between. But yes, I did love the set
the scene where they're having like breakfast for dinner, and he lets her interview him, and they're going back and forth in the interview. To me, that was like a terrific scene.
Oh, I completely agree. But in that scene, you can sit there and see how Superman was trying to sit there and go, this is Kal-El, this is Superman,
yeah,
but this is my opinion as Clark Kent as well.
Do you want to look at like having somebody like a Bradley Cooper play his dad? Is that reading into it too much, or do you think that was just a nod to bring in Bradley Cooper for a cameo?
I'd say it was a nod until we get a sequel. And I won't sit there and say that the message that they uncovered is completely true, because, here you have two different subtext of story where Superman Kal-El gets a story from his parents to where that he's supposed to reign over the human race and bring them up, but then after Lex gets a hold of the message, it's more of Superman has a harem of women and Superman's trying to take control. I sit there and honestly believe that it's a possible misinterpretation of the message that he was given.
Yeah.
There was never any doubt in my mind that there was something suspicious from Luthor, and even whoever was a part of that translation period of trying to sit there and translate the Krypton message from his mother and father, because it just comes across as kind of awkward. Because on one section you have Bradley Cooper and his wife sit there saying, we want you to do the best for the human race. We want you to do this. But then when Luthor takes control, it was, we want you to take control of the people of Earth. We want you to create a harem of women on Earth so that you can impregnate and continue the super cycle.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't believe that was actually what happened. I think it was a false information, because you can't sit there and say from Jor-El's point of view that I want you to go there and help these people, and then in the same sentence, I want you to rule these people. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's also one of those, like, Superman just being on the verge of being the absolute best person in the movie, and just probably the best hero to date, because, I mean, like you said, Superman was doing Superman things, saving the squirrel, saving the
Oh,
old.
that was fucking awesome. I'm not
Yeah.
going to lie. Here's shit coming down around him, and what does Superman do? He saves a squirrel. What does that mean? What does that mean when you sit there and look at Superman specifically? Is that Superman, no matter what, will save the lowest life creature just to make sure it lives in a bigger circumstances. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It makes perfect sense. I think I also saw this, and I shared it earlier on social media. I went in expecting a superhero movie, and I came out realizing that this new Superman film whispers a quiet rebellion. Kindness is punk rock, truth telling is power, billionaires are villains, borders can't be defined, borders can't define our wealth, and we're all human, we all belong. James Gunn, a job well deed. And a job indeed well done.
I agree with that to a certain specific point, but when you sit there and look at it from a geographical worldview, Superman being there and sitting there taking the strides as here's my truth, and then here's my, whenever you sit there and be like add people on, whenever you sit there and trying to communicate things like that, but like this person believes this person believes that.
Oh yeah.
In the long run, Lex is wrong.
Yeah.
Just for the simple fact that here's the thing about this movie, what a lot of people don't understand, and unless they watch it and comprehend it, Superman is very much so on an idealist point of view, and he will sit there and take those overcast or shadows on redemption and sit there and say, no, those aren't right. What's truly right oppositionally is this. And it's up to us as humans to interpret it as a good thing or a bad thing. Because Superman is the greatest of us all. And he's supposed to have the greatest of all of us entwined in him. And when he sits there and disagrees with us, do we sit there and disagree with him? Or do we sit there and go, let's see what he has to say before we continue? And in a lot of ways, it's basically, no, it's not let's see what he has to say. It's basically what I says goes. And that's the biggest conflict in the Superman universe is Superman has this certain way of voicing things and trying to correct things, whereas us humans, and I mean us humans, try to sit there and look at a valuable way to, what plans and what lies, what beliefs come from this.
Do you? But do you, before I'm sorry to cut you off, but I was just thinking about this. And like, before we keep going, I think this is a movie and a character that in this time and this day and age with everything going on right now, this is like the perfect movie for everybody to just forget our problems on what's going on between countries and shutdowns and all that stuff and just gravitate towards.
99%, I believe I agree with you, but there is that 1% that still sits there and thinks that we're being wronged, we're not being focused on, we're not being credited for what we do. It's a very complex world when you sit there and have a superpower being that can sit there and go, I will not allow this to happen to this country because it's unsafe and very much so unfavorable.
And I think can if I'm like
Go.
if I'm being completely honest, if we're talking about like we're talking a Superman movie today, right? We're talking the Superman movie. Go check it out. It's available now. Go see it on the biggest screen possible.
Go.
But
Please go see it. It's fucking incredible.
if say Superman were to pop up right now in the time and stuff that's going on, would you not think our people would probably tune in the way Lex Luthor is going about it and treat Superman that way?
I would agree just because of the misinformation fact.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because Lex Luthor gave out this very much so misinformation, but Superman gave this direct information. Who are you going to believe? An alien or a person of Earth?
Yeah. What the one thing okay, I love this movie. I do. But
I do. I love it too.
If there is one thing that I could not stand behind, it's how country hick they made the parents from Kansas.
I don't think they made them very country hick. I think they were very believable as a Midwestern couple.
But even in today's Midwestern
No,
parts, the talking at the phone like if it was the accents I kind of get, but the way she was like yelling at the phone and putting it down and talking to it like it was some kind of unattractive device, I'm like, come on now, that a little.
do you know why it was an unattractive? Do you know why it was an attractive device to her and the
Obviously,
father?
I mean,
Can I
obviously.
tell you why?
Go ahead.
Because they didn't look as Superman like that. They looked at him as a savior. Everyone else looked at him as a prosecutor, a judgmental person, an
Oh no, 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 no,
alien.
no. I was talking about the way they were looking and holding the phone when they were talking to him.
Which part?
Like
Because they talked to him quite a few times.
when they were first talking to him on the phone when you first get introduced to his parents and the phone is on on the coffee table and she's
Okay.
like screaming at it like he can't and he's like, oh, I can hear him, but you know what I mean, just the placement of the phone. And
That is, to me, that is a different interpretation to give Superman from his from his parental people to give him a different perspective. But when the reality sets in, Superman has to look at it from a certain point of view, because we get a lot of backstory through, Superman did this, Superman did that, Superman did this. And because it was an amalgamation of everything that we've gotten from Man of Steel till now. So we're sitting there trying to figure out which are good amalgamations and which are good circumstances to present Superman, Kal-El, the life of Krypton, and his parents. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
So since we went from Snyderverse to this, we're now experiencing, what is the proper longevity of Superman in the common complex, or what is Superman in that long-term complex?
Did you like, let me, before we keep going, did you
Go
like
ahead.
how we were talking about how Superman is, the savior of all saviors?
He's not.
But did you like how you didn't see Superman kill somebody in this movie
He
compared
did
to
kill somebody in this movie.
I'm talking about unlike the way
No,
we
he
saw him
killed somebody in this movie.
we did, but unlike the way he did in Zack
With
Snyder's
the
Man of
neck
Steel.
breaking part, yes.
Yeah.
But Superman still kills in this movie.
He killed the clone, right?
Mm-hmm. By setting him into the black hole.
Yep. Which was I do love the clone story, by the way. The way,
I thought it was too soon for the clone story, if that makes sense.
See, I've never been introduced to the clone other than, what is it, Superman
Ultraman?
3?
Yeah.
Superman 3. So I don't know, like I don't follow the comic book or the animated series, so I have
I've
never been
watched kind of
introduced to the
both and read kind of both. And what I've gathered is that I thought personally it was too soon to have Kal-El versus his Dark Kal-El, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I was like, man, this is from like Superman 3, but then I was like, maybe this is just the start and they'll introduce it in another movie.
No, it finished up in this movie because the extra Superman was killed how? By a black hole.
Yeah.
There was okay. The one thing I can sit there and praise about the Zack Snyder universe and the universe we're getting now is that they didn't try to sit there and take things from Zack Snyder's universe and the universe we're getting now, and they didn't try to mesh them. We got something new, if that makes sense.
It
we
does.
we got something. We still got something similar. You know what I mean? This person is powerful than this, so this happened and this happened. But we still got something paradoxical correct on the power scale of what the old Superman in Snyder's universe was compared to what our new Superman is in this new universe. I don't know if that's just me, or do you feel that?
No, I feel the same way.
Because when we sit there, the first time we are sit there and given the example of like Clark Kent did this, and then things turned out like this, is our first look into how both sets of articulation meant something. Like, the Snyderverse meant something here, but then the Guns universe meant something here, but some weird way they coincide and they magically and very much so competed with each other and aligned with each other.
Yeah. It was something new, it was something fresh. Even if it was a sprinkle of Superman's pasts, it was still just a breath of fresh air to me. That's all I can keep
I
saying for this movie.
Rachel Bosnian, I think she was the greatest Lois Lane ever, and that includes Margot Kidder.
I think the same thing with Nicholas Holt as Lex Luthor.
Nicholas Holt was Lex Luthor all the way
Yeah.
from the bottom to the top.
I
That man was just
I never
gratifying.
I never knew of a Superman movie where I'm like, "Oh, I enjoyed the villain way more than I did Superman," until and don't get me wrong, I love David Cornsweet as Superman, but I think Nicholas Holt match for match was top notch.
But sit there and tell me this: me and you are wrestling fans, right?
Correct.
What makes us? What makes a face? What makes a face is how good their heel is. Am I correct? Or am I wrong?
Yeah, no, you're right.
So for Lex Luthor to be this just unequivocally just disastrous asshole-ish bad guy, willing to do whatever to take out Superman, that made it so much more personal and made it so much more controversial. And it also sat there and made you question from previous interpretations, does this Lex Luthor equivalent the Lex Luthor that we're being shown? And in my opinion, yes, Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor is above most villains that Superman has ever faced, and even above Gene Hackman's
Oh yeah.
Lex Luthor, if I'm
With,
not mistaken. Am I wrong?
no, without a doubt. And I don't think it's a placement of time. Even if Gene Hackman had put on the performance of a lifetime, I still think Nicholas Holt outweighed and outperformed him.
Nicholas Holt was just fucking 100% amazing in this role. David Cornsweet, I loved as Superman. Is there some spots where he was wrong? Yes, but that's the point of Superman,
Yeah.
is
And
to be proven wrong
but
is
he
to be
also
proven right.
he also says it in that ending monologue with Lex Luthor, like, that's what makes me human. I'm wrong, I'm right, I have emotion, I'm scared, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
I have very, he basically sits there and says that I'm very human
yeah.
and I can't get past these human concepts.
Also, like, we didn't even talk, but the perfectness of the surrounding cast
Let's talk
of
about it. Come on.
of everybody who works in the Daily
We have
Planet
Hot
with them.
Girl.
Well, I'm
We
talking about just
have
I'm talking about just the reporters.
we have Jimmy Olsen. I thought it was so hilarious that women went after Jimmy Olsen. That was the way he was able to get information.
Wendell
Because
Wendell Pierce
yeah,
as Harry White.
and do you know what I also noticed?
Hmm.
That remember in 1978 when Superman had Otis played by Ed Begley Jr.
I'm not sure.
Whenever they went to the sewers and everything, and they tried Ed Begley Jr.
Okay.
Otis is in this film. Did you know that?
I didn't. Who's he play?
He plays the black gentleman that is in charge of Superman being destroyed by Ultraman and other things.
Oh, okay.
His name is, seriously, I noticed it whenever he's like, Otis, do this for me. And I was like, holy shit, that's Otis? And yes, Otis does appear in this film. There was a lot of characters in this movie that for a 2 hour movie, we'll sit there and say a 2 hour and 15-minute movie, there was a ton of characters, past and present and future,
Dude,
that
the scene where Malik gets shot, we didn't even mention that.
who is that?
The guy who gave Superman food, the Indian
Oh,
gentleman.
Malik.
Yeah, gets
Because Lex Luthor wanted to sit there and be like, hey, you know, this guy knows what you are. I'm gonna kill him if you don't tell me what I want to know. And then, what is it? 2 spins of the gun.
yeah,
Homeboy's dead. And Superman. What does Superman do after Homeboy dies?
cries.
He cries because he knows that he lost someone. And that's the one thing about this movie, is that when things come to push to shove and things go wrong, Superman is always there to try to right the wrongs, whether it be in a small focal point of being a part of the Justice Gang, whether it becomes the part of being a part of the larger gang, because Superman doesn't kill, so this Superman goes out and looks at specific ways to see who doesn't kill. There are so many, so many branches on that tree that could eventually be a story. And that's my point of view.
Yeah, I such
I
a good
feel,
movie.
here's the thing. I feel more for people in this movie, and there's more hidden details, more escapism. There's more down to rights. Here's the plot line and everything compared to the Thunderbolts, and even Superman Returns.
Yeah, it makes me just excited for the future and to see where the DC finally goes after some of the mediocre films we've gotten before in the past. Speaking of DC, before we get ready to talk about our favorite scenes, I saw something recently, just a few minutes ago, on breaking news. Warner Brothers is pretty much saying that they're going to scrap the Penguin season 2.
I haven't seen that, but I have also, because that's a part of the Elseworld.
Yeah.
Because Batman, the Batman and the Batman 2 and the Penguin are part of the Elseworld world. From what I've understand about this Superman's world, is that we are going to get very, very much so in tune with the Batman Superman universe, Batman Lex Luthor, Superman Lex Luthor. We're going to get so many counteractions to these different circumstances. Like, let's sit there and say that Superman has an extent over this, but that doesn't mean shit, because Lex Luthor knows what he's doing. And that's what I feel from this, is that we are going to get a litany of, because if you sit there and think of, let's sit there and look at things to come. We have Wonder Woman, Paradise Lost, which is supposed to be an HBO series based on the Amazonian women. And then after that, we're supposed to get a Wonder Woman. We have Brave and the Bold, which is Batman, and Damian Wayne, which is his 12-year-old son, becoming Robin. But not only do we have that, we have Dick Grayson and all those others that became Robins. We have all these different storylines to connect to. This was an absolutely perfect way to introduce the DCU universe.
Let me ask this before we talk favorite scenes. So
Okay, go ahead.
it seems like they have a perfect Batman, and that Batman movie's made so much money. Does it not make sense to maybe mesh the two, or are you okay with James Gunn creating his own Batman?
Here's the thing. From what I understand, and what is it? Anthony Muschietti, the guy that directed the It movies, is in
Yeah.
charge of the Batman Brave and Beyond movie. He is going to set up.
Oh, Andy
Uh,
Machete.
yeah, there we go. He is setting up a Batman and Robin that can sit there and contend with the Superman we have now with David Cornsett. But we are also getting a Tim Drake and a Dick Grayson Teen Titans as well.
Interesting.
And that's exactly what they're trying to hope for. They're even trying to sit there and bring Constantine in. You know who Constantine is, don't you?
Keanu Reeves.
Well, yeah, you're correct. But yeah, they're trying to bring in him. They're trying to bring in Wonder Woman. They're trying to bring in Katana. Do you know who Katana is?
From Mortal Kombat.
No. Katana is a magician that Bruce Wayne studied under with her father. And Katana is the daughter of the father that trained Bruce Wayne in the ways of deception.
In the League of Shadows?
In a way, yes. Not in the League of Shadows, but in a magical way.
Oh, okay.
We are gearing up for a Gods and Monsters. From what I've understood, we are in the looks of a Swamp Thing movie. Do you know what Swamp Thing is?
Yeah, I heard something about I think there's a rated R movie coming out
Yes.
too.
And not Robert England, but Wes Craven helped direct the original Swamp Thing. But we're also gearing up for more of the Justice Gang, which interprets to Justice League. You know, we could get numerous different action stars. We're now at the beginning of a.
I saw that Warner Brothers was so happy with this weekend that they're
Oh,
already
they are
pushing,
fucking fantastic.
they're already pushing for a Justice League movie. I hope that they just don't jump the gun.
I agree with you. I hope they let things build until we get a Justice League. Because
and I don't want history to repeat itself. I know Zack Snyder had a vision and had an idea, and things got rushed way back when.
Was his vision wrong? No.
No.
I don't think it was wrong.
It wasn't wrong
until
the executives pushed their way in and did what they wanted to. And we have a whole we have a whole episode on that if you want to go back and listen to our Aquaman episode, because that was where we put the end of the end stamp on the Zack Snyder's DC. And
is this movie better than The Flash? Oh, completely.
If you ask me, this movie is better than anything DC has put out since, with exception of the Batman. This is the best thing that DC has pushed out since probably The Dark Knight Rises.
I won't even say that. I think this is the best movie that DC has pushed out since Justice League Zack Snyder cut.
Oh, yeah, you could say that, but
just because the reason why I said that is because of how well-rounded the Justice League Snyder cut was. Because it filled in spots, it made things. I think Justice League Zack Snyder version is a perfect movie. But we are now in a situation where that doesn't matter. What matters is now what is formidable and profitable.
Yeah.
What superheroes do we have now that are, and that even goes for DC and Marvel, because Marvel's even starting to hit the gate on what's respectable and what's novel and what's approachable. Am I correct or wrong?
Yeah, no. And we're gonna get ready to talk about that in just 2 weeks with another Marvel episode. So a
What's
lot
that Marvel episode?
a lot of
Fantastic
good
Four?
Fantastic Four in just two
From what
short
I've
weeks.
seen from the trailers, it very much feels like a 1960s, which was when the Fantastic Four were released. It feels like that. And I'm very happy about that.
So am I. I am smooth sailing, that's for sure. Well, let's talk favorite scenes real quick. What is a few favorite scenes from this movie that you want to mention real quick?
Oh, I have a couple. The first scene where Superman's laying out in the very first scene where Superman's laying out, he's all hurt and everything, and he whistles and he calls for Crypto, and Crypto just kind of fucks with him. He's just all like jumping
Yeah,
all over him. Yeah, I thought that was clever because why? Because a dog. I've had plenty of dogs that no matter how serious or detrimental the situation is, they will still sit there and act like this is what's supposed to happen.
yeah,
And not only that, I sit there and look at also at the situation where certain ramifications come up with storyline prophecies where such and such needs to do this as a byproduct. It's like, no, let's keep the same story.
no,
Let's keep I'm glad you brought that out to me, but I want to do something very much so off the books and very much so pushing unilaterally the story closer to where we become. I don't need these, you know, convoluted stories. Basically is what the best thing I can say is if say such and such says this, about this group, but what can that group say about that?
yeah. If I had to name some favorite scenes, it would probably be I do like some of the chess games that Lex Luthor was having with, like, when Superman was battling, whether it be at the beginning or the end when he was fighting his dark self with, like, the when it felt like they were playing Battleship. Like, I did kind of like
Yes,
some of those. I did like some of those scenes.
but it
Um, I,
became
I
too much.
I did like the breakfast for dinner scene between Lois Lane
Agreed.
and Clark Kent.
But
Um,
only Clark likes breakfast.
yeah, and then any any of the scenes with is it Jimmy?
Hmm.
Yeah, any of the scenes with Jimmy was real fun. And then
Jimmy being this ladies' man. Oh,
yeah,
that was perfect.
and then when Clark and Superman had to go back to Kansas for for those few moments, and he got the old tack from his dad, man, that hit in the fields, and that was a very good scene. So I gotta applaud James Gunn. This
He hit
movie,
the feels, but it
this
also sat there and let him know that things that you were worried about in the past are still relevant. Am I right or
yeah,
wrong?
yeah. I gotta give it to James Gunn. This movie hits on all cylinders. CGI was fantastic. The storyboard was fantastic. Character development was fun. It got you introduced to everybody. Every single scene was wanted,
Crypto was amazing.
and every single scene was like not wasted. This movie has so much emotions. I'm gonna give Superman a 5 out of 5.
I'm gonna give it a 4.5.
I absolutely loved it. So
I'm gonna give it a 4.5 just because there are certain things that, like, it's basically whenever you sit there and describe like we're gonna sit there and be like take this corner of the universe and we're gonna sit there and we're gonna add our own interpretation to it, and it was only then that I didn't like it.
yeah,
There could have been so many different things that could have made that scene, because out of all Superman movies, and I'm going to even sit there and say out of most superhero movies, This one is the most decisive, if I'm correct, because the reason why I say this one is the most decisive is because you have your Snyder fans that sit there and say this is shit. I'm sorry to use that word, but that's their word. But then you also have your gun people that want to sit there and branch out and explore, and they're like, no, this is Superman. And you know what? Both of them are correct because both of them are Superman.
Yeah.
Weirdly, but they both are. But
Definitely.
I sit there and look at it as more of the people that are into it now trying to discriminate what's going on now between, you know, oh, what's it, you know,
Yeah.
this, and this, subjectively, the
Yeah. No.
higher, the higher super, when we sit there and debate what makes Superman, the higher philosophy to me always breaks down the lower philosophy. Because in order to make a great Superman movie, you have to look at all sides of the spectrum.
Well,
Because Superman,
they do in this one. That's for sure.
that is very true. Because when they sit there and say, such and such happened this way, but how can we sway it to this way?
But
And that happens in the movie, right or wrong.
yeah, no. Before we get out of here, though, is there anything you want to add before we get on to next week?
I absolutely loved every moment of the Superman. There were moments where I sat there and agreed with the outcome, and there were even moments where I sit there and were like, no, I disagree. But for the most part, when it comes to a Superman movie, you have to have all the legitimate and purposeful elements to that point of view. Which means, does he agree specifically with that? Does he agree specifically with this? Does he align with that? Because Superman can be taken so many ways.
Yeah.
We've had Superman since 1937. What ways can you interpret him and what ways can you accept him?
Yeah. And next week when we talk I Know What You Did Last Summer, we're also going to fit in there a top 5 movies of 2025 so far. So
Woo!
that's something we like to do halfway through the point of the year. So next week we're going to talk small segment top 5 movies of 2025 so far, and then we'll talk I Know What You Did Last Summer
I'll
live.
give you a
No
I'll give
spoil
you a
no no
spoil.
no
No
spoiler.
spoilers. All right,
No
never mind.
spoilers.
Never mind.
We'll talk
Sorry.
top 5 next week. When we talk I Know What You Did Last Summer and
Oh,
another
I
new
know what you
I
did last
Know.
summer.
Could you imagine if that was like a British movie?
Oh, I know what you did last summer.
Yeah. That's what's coming next week. We might do the entire episode next week in a British accent. I don't know.
Let's fucking do it. Let's just sit there and be like, hello, mate. We're going to talk about last.
Last summer.
Did you have any feelings about last summer?
Let's see what we can do all in one summer. Next week, new episode of the Cine-Men Movie Podcast. Have a good week, guys.
Have a great weekend. Woo! Jurassic World.